welcome to the new episode of the podcast. My name is Via Benavente, and I'm here with a special guest, clinical psychologist Ingrid Garcia. Today we'll talk about self-esteem. How can we strengthen and improve it in our lives? Ingrid, can you explain a little about what it means to have good self-esteem?
Thank you, Mia. First of all, what is self-esteem?
Yes.
Self-esteem is the love and appreciation we give to ourselves and what we think of ourselves. Having good self-esteem is the level of love we give to ourselves, how we care for ourselves, how much we love ourselves, what we think of ourselves, and the value we give to it.
Certainly. From your experience or perspective, where do you believe self-esteem forms? At what age, approximately?
Self-esteem begins practically at birth. This appreciation, as I mentioned, grows with us and depends on the upbringing we receive. From a young age, how our parents encouraged us saying, "You can do it." For example, when a child is learning to walk, "You can do it, you're good."
Very optimistic, right?
Exactly. So it starts from there. But what happens when we are not valued or supported in our upbringing? If we do not receive it, our self-esteem does not develop properly. Therefore, self-esteem begins from an early age.
Speaking about our parents and their role in our motivation at first, what recommendations or advice can you give to parents to strengthen self-esteem, not only in young children, but in teenagers?
Thank you, Mia. Really, from a young age, parents set a precedent for how we value ourselves. So they support us, as I mentioned, but there comes a time when self-esteem does not depend only on our parents because we start school and we start comparing ourselves to others. So during this time, the adolescence time, parents can help us again. And this is how. They can get close to the young people. They start making time for them. They avoid criticism and they try to highlight their virtues. They start noticing the good in them and they try to empathize with their feelings and not minimize them.
Understanding them.
Because many parents or adults who interact with their teenagers, they tend to downplay their feelings and they'll say, "That's ridiculous," or "You shouldn't feel that way." And that can significantly lower a teenager's self-esteem. What should a parent do? Well, empathize with those feelings and say, "I'm here for you." Also, parents should try to remember how they felt at the age and the things they needed.
Putting themselves in their shoes.
Exactly. Putting themselves in their shoes. And remembering that, even though they are adults now, they should understand and support their teenager. And so the teenager will feel growth with that relationship and support. And so self-esteem requires external support.
Yes.
Exactly. That is a very important point. If mom and dad's self-esteem is not very well developed, well,
what are they going to reflect in their children?
Exactly.
Okay, so we already talked a bit about parents. Now, I'd like to know from our perspective as young people, it may not be the same seeing it from the parents' point of view. What advice would you give us? How can we avoid getting stuck? Because often, as young people, we compare ourselves to others, like you said, and we need to overcome and see another perspective. I don't know, to keep moving forward in a better way and not stay there.
Exactly. There are definitely certain things that young people can do to improve their self-esteem. First of all, as you mentioned, don't compare yourself to others. We need to understand that we're unique and irreplaceable. We have the blessing of the gospel. And when we acknowledge that idea that we are children of a heavenly Father, our self-esteem should begin to grow.
Yes, of divine value.
Exactly. And secondly, as I was saying, don't compare yourselves to others. We are unique and irreplaceable. The qualities, values, and strengths that we have, or you have, are not the same of those of your sister, because you are both different.
Very different.
Exactly. You understand me. not compare oneself. To learn to see the human part inside of ourselves and to accept ourselves as we are, even physically. It is something valid, something important. Many believe that self esteem is solely about physical acceptance, but right now we are actually talking about the
Yes.
internal aspect. But the physical appearance is also important. I have to learn to highlight my physical features and traits, accept myself, and see myself as a person made in the image of God. So it is also important to recognize our qualities. What can we do and develop a self concept? What do I like? What am I good at? For example, many young people enjoy the lettering, and it's a virtue. It's a skill that not everyone has. Learning to recognize what we are capable of doing. Accepting ourselves internally and forgiving ourselves when we actually make mistakes. When we make a mistake, the first thing we do is punish ourselves constantly, reminding ourselves, oh, I did this or I did that, which affects our self esteem and self love. On the other hand, if we learn to forgive ourselves and accept that we've made a mistake and understand that we're human and we can improve, increases our self esteem because it makes us feel human and allows us to accept ourselves and not compare ourselves to others. That's the biggest mistake.
That is essential, I think. It's not just physical health, but also our inner well being. We shouldn't compare ourselves. The key word here is not comparing ourselves and accepting our divine worth as sons and daughters of God. Speaking so about youth, I've noticed that some of my friends have good self esteem and know their value, while others struggle. It's not that they don't know it, but they find it hard to accept. Could you give us ideas or recommendations, help us a little bit on how to improve self esteem, or how can we help them or others improve theirs?
That's an excellent question, Mia, and something we can do. We always seek to improve our self esteem on our own or seek help from an adult, but we can also seek help from people our age. So, what can we do? Well, for example, young people can approach their peers, like in the case of a young man who struggles when approaching other people. And socializing is difficult because he struggles with low self esteem and he spends a lot of time alone.
They don't adapt easily.
Exactly. Or those who have experienced bullying. We could consider reaching out to them. But first, we need to learn empathy. We've heard this word a lot, but it is important to understand how you would feel in the place of someone who is alone, someone who is lonely. Also, learning to see and highlight the qualities of our friends is very important. Often, among women, for instance, and I notice this, that we see something beautiful, but we don't say it.
We keep it to ourselves.
Oh, her hair looks great, but we keep it to ourselves. Instead, we could go to our friend and tell her.
Exactly, something like, your shoes are beautiful, where did you get them?
Exactly. Simple things like these can make the other person who might be going through a difficult time, or is sad, or has low self-esteem, it will help her feel better. Just mentioning that compliment her hair, for example.
That's something that can brighten your day,
Exactly.
right?
It can improve the perception you have of yourself because maybe this morning you thought, I'm so ugly. And then a true friend comes along and says, you look beautiful. And that is why we learn to see and highlight the qualities of others and also express them. Among friends, this can be very helpful. You know, among young people, what parents and church leaders say is important. But what another young person says is even more crucial. So what other things of us matters, and this helps our self-concept and self-esteem grow. Supporting each other is so important.
Yes, I really like what you said. Since you mentioned leaders, how can we, as young people, engage with them and vice versa so that we all work together as a team? Not just young people helping each other or parents assisting the youth, but all of us as church members coming together to have good self-esteem together.
Excellent. There are many things leaders can do, but let's start with the parents. Where do we spend most of our time? At home, right? So, parents first. How are our relationships at home? Parents need to learn to have a warmer relationship, to get close to their children. There should be some kind of complicity, of course, while setting boundaries, because parents need to set limits.
Listen to them.
Exactly. And we as young people need these boundaries. But parents need to develop that closeness to understand that their children are going through a difficult age. And as you mentioned, young people also need to learn to be open with their parents. They need to listen to them and accept that their parents also want this closeness, remembering that this is a two-way relationship. Therefore, both parties can accept and take care of each other. This also applies to leaders who should also get closer to young people by listening to them and understanding that everybody has different tastes, ideas, and experiences than we do as adults. So, trying to connect with them, this really is what young people need. Ask them how they feel, highlight their virtues, and help them to see what leaders and parents can actually see in them, but young people might not recognize about themselves. So parents and leaders should try to empathize with the feelings of young people and remembering how they felt when they were that age. Remembering that we've all been 17 or 18 or even 15 years old. How did we feel then? That is going to be important in helping us recognize what a young person is going through. We should never minimize anyone's feelings. Their emotions matter.
Yes, and speaking of minimizing, we must be careful with what we say. In a talk during General Conference, one of the apostles mentioned that we should guard our words. We should be direct, but not in an abusive way, and we shouldn't downplay others' efforts or actions. Communication is one of the keys, I think.
Exactly. That is very important because that can often diminish a young person's self-esteem significantly, or anyone's really.
Yeah.
If we only focus on the negative, if we only say you didn't do this or that, it diminishes self-esteem. Instead, we need to change the way we speak and say, you're so good at this or that. You could still improve here or there. We can work on it.
Say it with love.
Something that matters is how we express things. We should not say, I'm worthless or you can do this differently.
Focus on improvement, change, or something like that.
Focus this way. So this will significantly boost our self-esteem. Words can either take away or enhance self-esteem. So the words that we use as adults, leaders, parents, and even among young people are so crucial in providing support. They're so important.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. I truly learned a lot from this podcast. Some of the keywords we heard here are empathy and, above all, good communication. This helps parents, leaders, and us as young people continue progressing in this journey of life. We invite everyone listening to this podcast to share it with their family and friends, and we encourage you to apply the advice Ingrid gave us. See you in another episode of Let's Talk.